Hello, Melfit Army. Welcome to the Melfit podcast. Super excited to have a guest today. You know, I love guests. So, this is my friend Chris Vernet. And I want to tell you a little backstory about how Chris and I met. We were at a health and wellness fair several years ago, and I was at my booth, Josh and I just kind of minding our own business, and people kept coming up to me saying, "Oh my gosh, you have got to meet this guy." And so I wandered over, and here is Chris. If you're listening to this podcast and not watching, he is definitely the epitome of fitness. He had his shirt off and he was stepping up and off a step, which of course attracted a lot of attention. And I really liked that. It was like instant attraction. So we met for coffee, talked about some business ideas, and then we actually filmed you for, which at the time we didn't have our podcast, right, Josh? What was it for? Just we were doing like a coffee talk thing, or where were we putting things back then? I can't even remember. Oh, okay, yeah, like a lifestyle interview. So Chris moved here how many years ago?
About 5 years ago now.
From Georgia,
Yep, from Atlanta.
from Atlanta. And I was so inspired by his energy because he didn't know at the time he was with his girlfriend. And you didn't know anybody,
No, so,
but you seemed super confident.
I was at a point or a place in life where, I moved to Atlanta as a young child, and I moved there because my mom brought me there for the most part. It wasn't necessarily by choice. I'm grateful for the experience, great place to live. But I got to a point in time, I had graduated college, I had been in the workforce for about 3 years, and my question to myself was, what is the life that I want to live for myself? I'm here because of mom, huge mama's boy, so everything that I usually do is for her. And I was getting to a point to where I really wanted to live life for myself. So what I did was I drew up a list of about 15 different things in the environment that I wanted to live in. Because as we were just discussing earlier, I feel like our environment can strongly influence as well as empower us as individuals. So I drew up a list of about 15 different things, starting with being next to water. When you're in Atlanta, when you're in Georgia, the closest to water that you are is about 4 hours from the coast. They
Whoa.
have man-made lakes, but it's hot Atlanta. So I hated being hot
Yeah.
and not being able to be next to water. And it gets really cold there as well. So it'll get to 20 degrees in Atlanta, but it doesn't really snow. And I hated being in the cold and not being able to go out and play in the cold. So I was like, well, what winter activities do we have?
Yeah.
So and then safety and security, being able to be in a place that I did feel safe as well as comfortable, and little things such as that. And the list goes on and on.
Was it safe there?
It wasn't the safest place, but it's not also the most dangerous place.
Okay.
You have places in Atlanta that you definitely don't want to be in past night. I have a good friend of mine whose father was unfortunately shot and killed. And so he lost his father at a really young age, about 8, 10 years old. And so it's little things like that. Prior to Atlanta, I was in New York. So there's definitely safety issues as well as things that you see when you're living in the city. Thankfully, gratefully, it was never something that I had to expose myself to harshly. So, yeah. And so with that list I created, I just started traveling inside as well as outside of the States. And I came to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I remember Coeur d'Alene coming up on my dart throws, and I was like, Idaho? I was like, why would I go there? Potatoes. Yeah. And then I came to visit and loved the energy, packed my bags, moved the next month. And that's how I landed here.
That's crazy. What's so cool too is that you're not with the same woman that you moved here with,
Correct.
but you're still here.
Yeah.
Like although you guys had a little, some hardships, did you ever contemplate moving home, although
No,
you two moved here together?
not at all.
Were you like, this is home?
Yeah, when I came to visit, it really hit me. I think it was probably day 2 or 3. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is home for me. And so never really looked back. Yeah, always looking forward, right?
Yeah, for sure. So after Chris had a personal training studio when I met him, and then after that he went into insurance. So I now do some insurance business with him, farmers. If you need a good insurance agent, you want to quote, call Chris. So most recently, we kind of reconnected because Chris just completed a bodybuilding competition. So I thought it'd be fun to, Chris is interested in getting into the podcast space. So we had a little beer and cider post Chris's show last Friday. And it had been a long time since he had alcohol.
Yeah.
And just kind of, Chris was picking my brain a little bit. And I thought, oh, what a great way to help Chris, which I love helping people. That's just what I do, and just being here in the studio will kind of get you energized. And then, of course, he can pick Josh's brain. But also, I think it's important with any guests that I bring on is for you guys to get to know who's sitting here in our studio today. So I'm going to have Chris kind of take you back into, what was his child like growing up? Did he have, weight problems? What was, your past definitely has a lot to do with, your future, and it can make or break you. So we'll kind of go, take us, into your past. And were you into sports? What were you like as a
Yeah.
kid? What
So
was your food like?
if I go way, way back for you, because I was born in New York originally. So I was born in Yonkers, New York. And
That's cool.
so it's like the city area for anybody that's not too
That's
familiar.
cool.
It's about 20 minutes away, 20, 30 minutes away from Manhattan. And so the goal as well as the objective growing up was to stay off of the streets for the most part. Like we were talking about safety as well as security. It's one of those places where throughout the day, back then, throughout the day, I could walk the streets and I could be okay. But the goal was to never be out once the street lights came on, because that's when things got really fun for the people. So, growing up, what I did was play a lot of video games actually. And
That surprises me.
so that's how I stayed out of trouble. And then when I wanted to get that fresh air, I was more or less riding my bike, rollerblading, or skateboarding. And I was really big into wall ball then as well, because you had all of our alleyways and the back streets behind the apartments. So it's like where you slap a ball to the wall, and it's more or less like racquetball,
Okay.
but with a hand.
Okay.
And so that was my fun. That was my go-to. So I grew up, being a kid, we're fairly energetic as children. Hope to stay that way growing up as well. I know we sometimes lose that because of life, but my goal was always being active. And so we'd be in the streets racing with friends, riding bikes, or doing this, that, and the other. And then I moved to Atlanta when I was about 11 years old.
Okay.
And it was definitely different because I went from living in a small apartment to a nice house
Okay.
with a backyard. I had a tree house in the
Oh,
backyard.
I bet that was a big upgrade.
I had one of those 4-foot above ground pools in the backyard.
Nice.
And so these were things that I actually was never exposed to, really living in the suburban is what I'm going to call it, area. And New York is a little bit more expensive as well as costly than Atlanta. My mom, single mom, raised 3 kids. So the fact that we could move from that to this, I get why she wanted to move. Back then, I was very upset. We lost friends. Didn't want to leave family, friends, all that fun stuff. But hindsight's 2020, and I definitely appreciate it as well as value it, because I wouldn't have even gotten that exposure towards, wow, this is an environment or a space where I can be or feel more free. We had a really big front yard, probably the biggest one in the neighborhood. And the U-Haul truck is still in the driveway. And we have these kids come over and they're like, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Can we play football in your front yard?" I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, "Sure, I don't care. It's not
Yeah.
my yard." That's how I felt about
And
it
you
at the
remember
time.
that.
hmm Because it's truly, I guess you could say, that Southern hospitality.
Yeah.
You definitely felt that just straightforward moving in. And so, the neighborhood kids, they had a football game in the front yard, and one of the kids lived about two houses down, and his name was Skylar, and we became best friends. And he's the one that got me into football. And so that's how I got into sports. And so we were playing backyard football. He's like, "You're pretty good. You should come play for the school." And I was like, I don't know about that." And he just kept keeping on with it. And I ended up playing football for the school. And that's when I really got into athletics. Extremely grateful for that opportunity as well. And that's when I started playing football, running track. Those were my two primary sports. I got into lacrosse as well. Love swimming, but it sort of interfered with the schedules as well as the times. And that's where I guess my uh, fitness lifestyle per se was built or born, the foundation of it. Football was my primary sport. So, that being my primary sport, I wasn't the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest. And wanting to be the most proficient at my craft, I was like, how do I get bigger? How do I get faster? How do I get stronger? That's when I really started working out. But even though I was working out, I was still, the scrawny, the small kid. I remember some of my old high school teammates, they still make fun of me till this day because they say, "Chris, I remember when you used to walk into the gym, you walked in with the cut off sleeves on your shirt, but you had the smallest, skinniest arms." And one of my old teammates gave me the nickname Birdman because my chest was so
Oh.
small at that
Oh.
moment in time. And so, though it was all fun and games at that time, those things definitely, like you said, they influence who you become. And so
Absolutely.
you can either use it to really beat you down and bring you down, or you can use it how I use it is it lit a fire under my butt. So more or less, it was how do I get bigger? How do I get stronger? Some people correlate it to muscle dysmorphia, whereas it's a psychological aspect or idea that you don't have enough muscle mass or muscle size. Still to this day, I definitely battle with it, but it's always been about how can I get bigger? How can I get stronger? And
Mm-hmm.
so there have been periods of life where my fitness was more geared towards functionality. Um, and I've definitely gone through those stages of, well, we're in it for the long haul. So health is wealth. So outside of the muscle mass, how can I also have the functionality as well as the longevity with things as well?
Mm-hmm.
And so before I go off on too long of a tangent, that's how the foundation of it all started, to answer your question.
See, it's interesting, you guys. Not everybody has that childhood, you know, weight gain where with you it was being underweight. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's why I hate milk. If you're listening to this, Jana Hartsock, she was my best friend growing up, and they had cows, Bessie, Bertha, Wilhelmina, and we would milk the cows in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would have big jars of cow's milk, and they strained it as best they could, but there was always like black hairs on
Ooh.
and I don't know. I hate milk because it was one of those things where, oh, my twin sister and I were like underweight,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, you need to drink milk, and I'm like, no, I don't need to drink milk. But yeah, I get it for sure. Everybody's, perception of what you need to look like versus what you want to feel like.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
so did you play football through high school?
So I played through high school and then I played for 3 years in college. So I went to a small school in South Georgia, LaGrange College, and that's where I played. And I played cornerback, defensive back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Good for your mom for, you know, raising you guys by yourself and having, all boys,
No, so I have an older brother and an older sister.
and everybody went to college.
I was the second one. So my brother went, but he didn't finish. My sister went and she finished. She took the longer route as well. So 2 of the 3 finished college.
Okay, that's awesome. Good job, Mom.
Yeah, she did a good job. She did a good job.
All right, and how does the story continue?
Well, as we continue the story, fast forward a little bit of ways, we have uh, last year was probably one of the more harder years of life for me. And so me and my partner had split up. My mom had gotten diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. My dog of 9 years had passed away. And this all happened probably in a span of a couple of months, a few months. So it definitely took me for a
This is
whirlwind.
2023.
This is 2023.
Yeah, it comes in threes.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's crazy. And so all of these fun events happen in my life. And so especially with how impactful mom is towards my life, Zeus, who was my puppy, passing away, I didn't realize how strong of an impact those two things for sure would be. But losing Zeus, even though he was a dog, it was like I lost a brother, I lost a son, I lost a guardian, my best friend, all at the same time.
You're constant. I mean, I tell you what, because people are so flaky, and if you're listening to this, you guys, I'm nudging Oscar with my foot because he gets so comfortable, he starts snoring. But yeah, I'm telling you what, they show up. They're not flaky.
Yeah.
I've been let down by so many people in my life. It's like, that's what the hardest thing about doggy deaths are. It's like they're your constant,
Yeah. Longest
They love you at
relationship.
your best. They love you at your worst. They're just constantly there.
100%. 100%. And so, a lot of things were going astray for me at the time, is what it felt. And so that's where I truly find that the foundation of all life is fitness or physical activity. And so that's where bodybuilding came into play for me, in alignment with what I aspire for as far as goals go for my physical body. Bodybuilding is probably more or less, I would say, one of the more extreme sports that you can partake in which you are extremely disciplined in your practice. This being said, and this is something that I want to help out with the bodybuilding community as well, a lot of people may generally think that bodybuilding is all about how do you build the most muscle or get the most size, whereas I had the blessing as well as the opportunity of crossing paths with an individual who lost 138 pounds throughout his bodybuilding experience because of bodybuilding. Another individual who lost 89 pounds in a span of a year. So dramatic changes within the body. And so that's more or less where I geared towards to get my life. I felt like my life was in a chaotic form per se with all of the losses. So the only things that we really can control in life are ourselves. We can't really control everything else outside of it. And so that's the practice that I took towards. And with that experience in itself, it not only did I have the physical changes, but I also had the psychological changes, the spiritual changes. It's definitely, I want to argue as well as put out there that being the sport that it is, a lot of people probably think that it's a physical sport, but I would argue that it's a spiritual sport. And I'm grateful for that experience all in itself. Something that I found is outside of the physical aspect of it, because you're so strict on your regimen of what you're eating as well as what you're doing physically, because you want to make sure that you don't injure yourself before your competition, it definitely creates an awareness of your actions. Like, the fact of the matter is, I used to play a lot of basketball and racquetball prior to bodybuilding, but I've also had high degree ankle sprains via basketball. You can tear things playing racquetball just because of the sudden movement. I'm an avid snowboarder as well, but I love to full send it on the mountain as well. But you gain a little bit more consciousness as far as, well, should I really be doing this, that, or the other? Because if I do this and I hurt myself, I won't be able to do this. And so it creates a heightened sense of awareness per se in regards to your physical activity as well as actions, but also as well your diet. So not only what you're doing, but also what you're intaking in, because you're having to take into consideration, well, this is what I need for energy. This is what I need for muscle. This is how I'm going to burn fat. This is how I don't put on too much fat. So it creates that sense of awareness of your diet as well, which is obviously, I would say, uh, the largest portion of fitness. A lot of people think about the, hey, how much do I have to do? But, abs are made in the kitchen, And
90%.
so outside of the physical aspect of it, it also created a higher sense of awareness towards the environment that I was in as well. So, like what we were discussing earlier, how influential as well as powerful the environment is, I started being highly, highly more conscious as well as aware of like, it's, it was crazy to me at the time. Like, you definitely see it, but at the time, because it was so intense, how often or how much you see like alcohol or good food in TV shows or in commercials. And I was like, man, this is like crazy. In every single episode, there might be some
Sub-
form of alcohol
subliminal
or
messages.
some form of sweet treats or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. Just, and I like just call it food porn. So much food porn out there, and a lot of people may or may not see it, but it was definitely heightened throughout that experience. And then socially speaking as well, because of the bodybuilding aspect and because of your goals that you are aspiring to achieve, you gain more insight as well as awareness towards the people that you're hanging out with. When do people want to hang out with you? And then what are you guys doing when you guys are hanging out? Are you guys talking about goals as well as objectives, or are you guys just out lollygagging, drinking, and enjoying or having fun per se, in a way? And so you start to realize, I'm gonna decline on doing this or partaking in this activity because I have this goal as well as what I'm setting myself out for. And then you just start to realize people will stop inviting you places, or maybe you'll stop going to places that you used to frequent, which will change your sense of security in a way, because we're such social creatures as well as social beings that we want to be with people. We want to surround ourselves with people. But yet, when you're aspiring or moving towards something outside of those people or outside of yourself, it sort of shifts that perspective. And then it almost shifts the mentality of like, well, am I really loved? Am I really wanted? And everyone is truly loved as well as wanted. Is just more or less geared towards like-minded individuals as well as people. And so you'll see that through that bodybuilding experience, that was definitely heightened as well. And then, stemming from the ground up all the way through those things, the mentality as far as the discipline, the focus, the good as well as the bad days, you go through so many different challenges, mentally speaking. And with everything else that I had going on as well outside of that, it was just wow. It was just wow, wow, wow. And I feel like when you, me personally, when I'm not going to say it was a mental breakdown, but it was more or less my come to Jesus moment of like, what's going on? What is life? Who am I? What do I really want? What's important to me? Who's important to me? Am I in a place that's truly allowing me to grow? Am I in a place that is feeding that growth as well? And then also, am I feeding that environment as well? And that's where, the connection of all of these things, I would say, probably unleashed or freed that internal resting energy. I call it fire. So the fire within me started burning and was released all throughout my body as well as that experience. And so I have an acronym for fire, and it's free internal resting energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I saw that on your post the other day.
And so that's where, or what really came from the bodybuilding experience. You had so many different forms as well as element as far as my physical health, my environmental health, my social health, my mental health, all tapping into my spiritual health. And it was truly, truly a great experience. And I advocate as well as strongly suggest it, whether it be not necessarily saying that everybody should partake or do bodybuilding, but have a form of a bodybuilding experience in which they are taking note as well as taking hold of that physical sense of being and then leveling it up in ways. And it's definitely a spiritual game as well as sport, as is life, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin your train of thought, but
No,
can I
you're good.
interject? I have a
Please,
couple
please do.
questions.
Hit me with them.
The one thing I wanted to ask you, I was telling Chris when we met the other day, the percentage of millionaires in the United States is like 8.8%. The percentage of people that will ever run a marathon is less than 1%. The percentage of people that will ever have visible abs is, I think, less than 2%. Did you Google how many people will
I,
actually?
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. Did you catch it?
No, Josh, will you Google that for he'll look it up.
Awesome.
So how many people will actually do a bodybuilding competition? And the one thing that I wanted to ask, and you've been in my thoughts and prayers. It sounds like what's your mom's name?
Franklin.
Frankline. Frankline. I mean, you'll read my book that I'm writing soon, and it's that's a tough one, a single mom. I mean, good for her you turned out amazing. So
Thank
good
you.
job, Frankline. But kind of knowing your story, it's just amazing. So having, a major breakup, losing your dog, your mom gets diagnosed with cancer, your only parent, your ride or die. I know what that's like. I've never met my father. Did the decision to do the bodybuilding competition come after? Or at what point were you
No,
like, oh, I think I'm going to do it? Like, when did that?
it was during. It was during. So prior to all of these fun things happening, um, it happened also in bodybuilding. You have an off season, and then you have a prep. And so your off season is basically that period of time where you're building your body, and then your prep is where you go into that depleted state right before the show or right before the stage day. And so this all happened during the off season for me. So it wasn't prior to me making the decision to go into bodybuilding. My initial decision or reason why I wanted to go into bodybuilding was to create more or less that foundation of regiment in my life, more structure, and like everything else, I believe that the foundation of all of life begins with the physical side of things. And so I definitely was already looking for more or less structure, or that's probably the easiest word that I can think of, structure. And I felt like bodybuilding was the most extreme version. Obviously, we tend to be very driven individuals as well as people. And I'm more or less a 0 to 100 kind of guy. Like, why do anything if you're not going to put 100% of your effort as well as will into it? And so what it came down for me is prior to bodybuilding, I already went to the gym. I already ate fairly healthy. Obviously, I do enjoy my Chick-fil-A and my Costco pizza. Don't get me wrong there, more or less. But I wanted more accountability for myself. And I felt like bodybuilding was one way, shape, or form to create the most accountability for myself on the physical side of things.
Did you meet the people that you spoke about that lost the weight? Did you meet them at the gym?
No, I met them throughout the bodybuilding experience as well as in the community. So the community in itself is a beautiful, awesome community. I am with a team, a bodybuilding team. So I have my coaches and they coach other people outside of myself. And so I have one of my teammates who's had a very, very beautiful journey, and he's lost over 130, 140 something pounds throughout the experience. And at my last competition, I made a very good friend, or I'm going to call him a friend. I don't know if he deems me as a friend now, but he's inspired me as well. And he literally, before we walked out on stage, he said, "I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm just really happy to be here. This is what happened to me prior to this. And I think that bodybuilding saved my life. That's what he
Oh,
told me. And so when he told me that, I was like, man, that is awesome. This is somebody I never knew, somebody
yeah,
that I've never met, and he had such a life-changing experience. And there's lots of individuals as well as people, everybody's going through a battle.
yeah.
And so for people to be able to find as well as experience something that can positively impact them as well as change their life, is it was truly beautiful. Like that in itself was one of those moments where it made everything seem worth it, even though I've had my own experiences within the bodybuilding community as well as through the experience in itself. Like seeing other people also have those life impacting changing experiences was beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I could tell. I wish you would share more behind the scenes. I could tell that you were really enjoying the camaraderie of it.
Yeah.
And I've done marathons and long bike races, and I'm a marathon coach. And my saying that you'll see all over Melfit is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And everything that I've ever done, all the medals that I have that still need to be hung up, what I remember most is the journey with people. It's just like the unspoken and the trust that you can achieve in a community of like-minded people
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
You could get into this community, whether it be marathoners or bikers or bodybuilders or Melfit Army, and there's just an unspoken trust
Oh yeah.
where you might be friends with someone for 20 years and not in a million years would your friend share with their closest people, but shared with you. I mean, I hear this stuff all the time where people will be like, oh my gosh, I've never told anybody that. And I'm like, that is a huge compliment. The
Right?
fact that you trust me enough to tell me that. But yeah, we'd love to see more of your journey. And, I think what people are really interested in is, what do you eat? A day in the life. So Chris is saying he's a personal trainer is like an understatement. That's like saying I'm a personal trainer. I have way more qualifications than that, and so does Chris. So I know you want to do your podcast and you are going to do your podcast, and that's where I would encourage you to. Chris is very private, unlike me. But I have to tell you, people love vulnerability.
Yeah.
They love it when I share. And how are they going to trust me if they don't know who I am?
Exactly. I can appreciate
And
that.
and the biggest thing is that I know who I am. I can't help anyone unless I know who I am. So I think that it'll be fun to see, you pull back the layers of vulnerability, but you've got so many qualities.
Thank you.
I mean, just the quality of being organized, have you ever heard the phrase, is your house in order?
Oh, yes, yes. I
That
like
can
that.
apply to everything.
Yeah.
What's your car look like? What's your kitchen look like? What's your bedroom look like? What's your office look like? So, did you look that up, Josh?
Couldn't find a percentage, but it's 1 in 25,000.
Whoa.
That's a lot.
You're above average, the upper crust. So, the one thing that I think is beautiful is when a coach, like you and I, can hire a coach. And I have 4 coaches, and my life is dramatically changed in the last 10 months because of having a coach. And I think that the one thing that anybody that's a coach, hiring a coach, you have to put your ego aside.
Oh, yeah.
And,
100%.
we only know what we know. And the most beautiful thing in the world is realizing that you can learn something from anyone you meet. So once you put that ego at the door, I listen to podcasts every day. I listen to Audible books. The most beautiful thing that I hear is when somebody who gets introduced with this big long title, Dr. So and so, blah, 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 all these degrees. What I think is so beautiful is when they're getting interviewed and they say, I actually am not an expert at that. That's kind of, and they're admitting that they don't know everything. What's really ugly is when people proclaim to know everything.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that I wanted to ask you is, how long did you train, and what did your coaches do for you? Because you already have, they were probably like, hallelujah, this is a dream client. Somebody that already has discipline. And another thing too is, and this can be a challenge in itself, taking on a bodybuilding client that needs to lose weight, which your friends, your teammates did, versus you that needed to put on muscle,
Yeah.
which can be its own animal. So
I commend them for what they do.
what did your coaches do for you? How long did it take? How long did they tell you it was going to take? How long did you think it was going to take? And just as a side note, if you're listening to this, we'll share Chris's, if you'll let us, before and after pictures so you guys can kind of get the visual
Oh, yeah.
about the muscle that he gained.
Yeah, sure. So to answer your questions, hopefully I remembered all of them, but pretty much what my coaches did for me is, prior to us figuring out what I needed to do, it was more or less when we were going to do it. That way we could create that baseline of, this is how long it's going to take, this is what the goal is going to be. And so I had to sit down with my coach, and he asked me why I wanted to do it, what my plans were, et cetera, et cetera. And we figured out what the goal was, and then we hit a timeline for the following year. And so we created a timeline, I believe, it was about a year, but my off season in itself was about 9 months long. And then I had a prep after that. And so we set the goal last around, I would say, this time of the year. And the goal was to put on more muscle. And so pretty much what he did for me is, we got my weight down, we got my body fat percentage down. And when you're putting on that much size, you want to be able to do it in an orderly fashion. You want your body to be able to adjust, your organs to adjust to the food that you're digesting, as well as intaking, your skin for the muscles that you're growing. That way you're not getting stretch marks and things of that nature. And so you want to build the muscle, you want to build the size, the mass, but you want to do it slowly over time. You don't want to just do it all at once.
So even with gaining weight and getting stretch marks from gaining weight, you can actually get stretch marks from gaining muscle.
Yep.
That I did not know.
And so, and it's more or less a reflection. Your body is a reflection of yourself. And so, when you're putting on too much muscle or mass too fast, you're going to be getting those stretch marks, and it will show physically on your body. And that's something that I think, I don't know if it's necessarily something that the judges judge on, but maybe it's something that they see as well as they appreciate of, like, hey, this person's skin looks very well put together. It looks like this is done naturally. This hasn't been done advanced. This hasn't been rushed or too fast. This is a body that this person or individual has worked for, and they can see that. And you can tell stretch marks via mass growth versus maybe stretch marks or loose skin from weight loss. And I think that they take that into appreciation from both ends of, outside of, this is what this person looks like, they take into account, this is what this person worked for. But to make sure I don't go off on a tangent, because I love to do that as well. So in regards to what my coach did for me, basically,
We don't care, people. You better be walking if you're listening to this. If you're one of my clients or part of the Melfit Army.
getting after it.
Some of I mean, we've gone hour and a half, 2 hours before,
Yeah.
but
And so he got my weight down, got my body fat down, and at that point, he created a plan for diet, to make sure that I was getting the right amount of food in, as well as he created as well as structured my workout to make sure that I was building muscle in the right places.
so when you were going to do your workouts, they gave you the workouts, you went and did them. It's not like they were your personal trainer.
Nope. So thankfully, I guess that's what he's grateful for as well. Is some coaches maybe babysit, yet not all coaches do babysit, and I think that's very, very. I think that's very important for coaches as well as clients. Understanding as well as knowing that your coach is taking time out of their day to help you grow, to help you achieve your goals as an individual from the client's perspective, as well as, and hopefully they can understand as we realize that your coach can be there to help you, guide you, be an accountability partner, but it's up to you to put in the work, to put in the effort. And so he doesn't have to babysit me. I'm not going to speak on his other clients. I don't know if he
What's
has
your
to.
coach's name?
Coach Mel, Tremel Taylor is his name.
Tremel. He's a Coach Mel too.
Yeah.
He goes by Coach Mel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Coach Mel. Hope you're listening to this because I'm Coach Mel too. What's his team called?
Top Gun Fitness.
Top Gun Fitness, and
Yeah.
this is out of Spokane.
Out of Spokane, Washington.
How long has he been doing it?
Oh, he's been doing it for a minute, a long while. I don't want to
Okay.
speak out of my butt, but I know that he's a pro bodybuilder himself. He's a
wow.
professional. And so I think he's just giving back to the community now. And so I know he's been bodybuilding, I believe, since the 80s, if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken.
What's his Instagram?
So his Instagram, I believe, is Tremel IBF Pro.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay, we'll attach it.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to, yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So just he was your coach?
So he was my coach. He was my main coach. And then his wife, Lydia,
Okay.
those two are the leaders of Top Gun Fitness.
Okay.
And Lydia, she coaches the women, and Mel coaches the
Okay.
men. And so they're a little power couple.
Okay. So I personally, do you feel like Mel, knowing that you're in the industry and that you're also a coach, do you think that he was nervous in any way to have you as a client?
I don't think so. I think his biggest thing for his clients that he aspires as well as wants to see from them is that they just truly want to grow. Yeah. I think that's what's most important. And he has such a good heart as well as good soul that if he can see that that person wants to grow, then he's going to go out of his way to ensure and help them grow.
Did he meet your expectations?
Oh, that's a powerful question. So me personally, I do not hold expectations ever for anybody. I just feel like expectations tend to lead to disappointment. Yeah. And so going into things with a clear spirit as well as a clear heart and clear mind, I tend not to hold people to expectations. I feel like that's
way of looking at it.
Very unfair. And so what I will say is if I did have any, he exceeded them.
That's awesome.
What I will say is we hit all of my goals. We accomplished as well as achieved a lot in the rookie season that I had of bodybuilding. So you have different classes. And so I was in men's physique. So you have bodybuilding, which are your really, really big guys. And then you have your classic physique, which are your big guys, but they're not as big and they're looking more at size as well as aesthetics. And then you have men's physique, which is what I partook in. And so they're looking more or less, they do like to see the muscle, but they're definitely looking at the aesthetics. I'm the one that's wearing the board shorts, not the man thong kind of deal. And they're looking at my V taper. So how thin is my waist? How broad is my shoulders? How big is my back? Things of that nature. So that's the class that I was in. And then once you get into your class, you have your true novice, which is your rookies, so people that have never competed ever in a bodybuilding competition. And then you have your novice, which is your individuals that have competed in bodybuilding competitions but haven't won the open class. And then you have your open class, which is your overall, so everybody participating in that class. And so it was my rookie season, and in my rookie season, I got first place in the true novice. So of my rookie class, I got first place. And then at my second show, I got first place in the novice class. So after my first bodybuilding show, I couldn't do true novice anymore. So, and then I got first place in the novice class. And then I was able to place third in the open class in all 3 shows for the most part. And so being able to have those achievements my first year, first time ever bodybuilding, I would say is a great accomplishment in itself, and definitely because of him. So
Congrats.
exceeded any and all expectations if I had any, which I didn't, but he definitely crushed it as a coach on his side.
That's awesome. So were your coaches, so you did 3 kind of back to backs?
Yeah, knocked
which,
it out.
When I heard that, I was like, okay, I know what it takes to get lean.
Yeah.
Not as lean as you, but definitely have had some personal goals myself. It's like if you've got that physique, might as well just travel all over. So you did one in Spokane, one in Montana, and one in Washington.
Correct. So first one was in Montana, and that was in Missoula. And the second one was in Spokane, Washington. And then the third one was in Bellevue, Washington, over near
Were your
Seattle.
coaches participating in these competitions as well?
They were not participating per se as far as competing in the competition, but they were at every single show. So they drove to every single
That is
show.
so
They were
special.
there backstage with you the whole entire
Oh,
time.
that's special.
So they're with you at the hotel to make sure that you're doing
that's
everything
so
accordingly.
special.
So yeah,
So, did they have other clients at these competitions as well?
they did. They did.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually how I got into being a marathon coach. I had a brick and mortar personal training studio 5 years ago, and I had a client that we lost 118 pounds together, and she had hired a running coach. And she, at the time, she had 6 kids. And her running coach was just dropping the ball, like a mother of 6 kids. Like, we need our runs ahead of time. She needs to accommodate daycare because some of the runs are like, we train up to 20 miles. That's
Yeah. Way too many for me.
half a day, right? So she was paying this guy good money.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just saying that, she would do a race and he'd be like, hey, tag me. And he wouldn't be there. And I was like, you know what? I said, you go ahead and save your money. I said, I'll train you. So I became her marathon coach, and I pounded every mile with her, and I ran every race with her.
That's
and I'm
awesome.
like, that's what a true coach is.
Yeah.
That is what a true coach is, and I think that's what's beautiful about coaching is just knowing that there's one person that believes in you, because your sport is rare. Some of the things I've done are rare. So the support system that we have is small
Truth.
because people don't get it.
Truth.
Why would you do that? Arnold Schwarzenegger's quote, I never want to look like you. Well, don't worry, you won't. No, it's not cocky when you can back it up. There is a difference between cocky and confidence.
Yes.
And it's I think the way that people should look at, the sport is with admiration. 73% of our nation are overweight or obese. That means 27 percentile actually are getting up every day and, doing the W's, water, workout,
Yeah.
walking, whole foods. So who's pointing the fingers? The 27%.
I think
the
something.
73%.
And I hate to interject or interrupt
Yeah,
here,
do
but
it.
you just said something that I think is very, very foundational, because as far as cockiness versus confidence. I feel like that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have confidence within themselves, and that reflects towards the confidence that they take in life. But also, and well, as far as that admiration, when specifically speaking about bodybuilding, for example, and people are on stage and people see that highlight, they see that person, they see that glow, but they don't necessarily see the 5 a.m. workouts. They don't see X amount of time in cardio. They don't see the time put into the
Yeah.
kitchen, the time eating all of that food as well in itself is a job. And that in itself, those actions is what creates that confidence. And that confidence is what creates that presence as well as that appearance in itself. But spiritual side of things, I feel like when you can work diligently as well as conscientiously at something specifically, but also as well incorporate all of your experiences that you've held as a child growing up, whether it be through work, whether it be through connection or conversation, whatever it may be, taking all of those moments in life and putting those moments into one single act, whether it be you're posing, whether it be to talking to somebody. And I think that's something that we definitely do maybe subconsciously or unconsciously, but if we can take all of those moments in life and then put it into a single conscious effort by living in the moment or living in the present, I feel like that's when things start to open up or explode for you per se. But yeah, that's something that you just made me think
I
about.
love it. So, would you say that your kind of like why was? I'm just going to ask you this directly.
Okay.
What what is your why? What was your why? Number one,
Okay.
and how did doing this and finishing it, because there's probably a percentage, if we Googled it, of people that train for a competition, but they never take the stage. How did that, or how is that carrying over to other areas of your life? Or what is your intention of how that can carry over to other areas of your life, being so disciplined?
So if I could answer that question, how I would answer it would more or less be along the lines of my why is to live in abundance and share that with others, help people live in abundance as well as teach others how to do the same thing. I would say that's my why. You know, growing up with a single mother raising 3 kids, we didn't really have a lot growing up. There were some days, sometimes she worked very very hard. So for the most part, we weren't ever starving like I know some people are. But there were days where I was like, well, what am I going to eat today, kind of deal. And when I moved to the suburbs of Atlanta, you know, I had the friends that growing up, I had the friends that got their car from their parents when they were 15 or 16 years old. I enjoyed my video games, but usually it was a year or two behind, and they're hand-me-down video games. Or I used to do yard work around the neighborhood, and then I would walk to GameStop to buy used games. So I'd do the work, and then I'd go to buy used games, not new games. And so there was more or less where my friends also had the new video games. Or I remember when the Razor scooter first came out. I'm sort of aging myself, but I'm still young.
Yeah, you are.
The Razor scooters came out, and all of the toys, all of the gizmos, all of the gadgets. My friends always had those, whereas I didn't, and that's just because my mom knew what the priorities were, and so being a kid didn't really appreciate or understand that. So growing up, I almost always had a lack, whether it be a lack in objective things or superficial things, a lack in my feelings of my muscularity or my size. And so there's always been a lack per se that I had in life that I felt. And it's definitely more or less geared towards psychology than anything else. And so that was my biggest thing, was how do I create less lack? I feel like we come into this world naked and we leave with nothing as well. So nothing is truly ours, but the beauty or the essence of life is we can create as well as we can produce. And that's the gift of life in itself is we have growth. And so my biggest thing was growth. And so that was my why. And I feel like we have so much in this world. There is so much land, there's so much resources, there's so many people, there's so many beautiful connections, there's so many experiences, whether it be the physical experience of bodybuilding or whether it be the environmental experience of being able to move and live out in the mountains or by the lake or be able to go out and experience the boating life or snowboarding, like all of these experiences that I may not have been exposed to as a child growing up or didn't know about it, but because of the beauty of life, now I'm able to experience all of these things, have all of these things. And that is just from a greater source of abundance, that spirit being within us. I feel like we have people are known as human beings, right? And so we have this human side to us, and then we have this being side to us. And so the human or the animalistic side is more geared towards the survival side. That's what our brain is geared towards is what am I eating? How much sleep am I getting? And am I reproducing kind of deal, like the survival perspective of a human. And then I feel like we are such special creatures as well as beings that we were created to thrive, not survive. And that's where that spiritual essence comes from. And so that is more or less, before I go off on another tangent, my big why is to, you know, thrive in this space as well as in this environment, and us being social creatures as well as beings being able to share that with others. That way they can thrive. That way they can find success, peace, as well as happiness, as well as growth.
I love that. I went to that opening of Mode that I was telling you about. It's a workspace in Liberty Lake if you're local. And the owner of the business, Luke, was saying that, you know, he wanted to open up the school, the private school, first of all, to help middle school boys, first and foremost. Because what happens when they become a man? Like all the foundation of their life is when they're, you know, in middle school. And he opened up the school. It ended up being, you know, girls and boys, and the style's just totally different than a regular school. It's actually things that you're going to use in your life, you know. And he was saying that COVID just killed kids. Well, it killed adults too. Not literally, yes, but
Figuratively as well.
yes, mentally, spiritually. You know, you take it's hard enough because there's so many things going on in our youth, and you take somebody who's already having some, you know, mental challenges, and then they're locked in their house for 2 years. I mean, what does that do?
Right.
So I think, you know, I know because I am a coach and I've been behind the scenes with my athletes and seen the spiritual growth and what happens to people. It's like if you could cap it and sell it, it'd be worth $1 billion a bottle.
Yeah.
Right? There's people that will go through life that will never experience what you've experienced or what I've experienced. And I think it's really, it's a beautiful thing to want to share that with people because they haven't experienced it. Like your coach knew that you were going to be a different person in 10 months, right?
It's funny because his approach with it and how he advises everybody is it's going to go one of two ways. You're either going to go on stage and you're going to love it, or you're going to go on stage and after that experience, you're never going to want to do it again. And so I'm grateful that I was on that top side of it for sure.
I love it. And there's a lot of people out there who just aren't growing daily. You know, you can, you know, time. What are you doing with it? Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you meeting new people? I was just telling one of my clients yesterday that, and you may have experienced this well because you were talking about, things are different now. Chris now has to go, not has to, wants to go and train, wants to, fuel his body so he can get down to, single digit body fat. And eyes wide open, all of a sudden you realize that you've been hanging out with people that you're not in alignment with. And it's just been, you're normal, you're constant.
Yeah.
Kind of like your dog. They're just there every day.
Right.
And then you realize, wow, are these people adding value to my life?
Yep.
And then you start to see almost like floating above people. Was that me? Was I doing that? Was that my life? And to be honest with you, in the last, 10 months, I don't even have the same friend group. People that I thought I would be friends with, that I've been friends with for 20 years, I'm not.
Yeah.
And I've had a close friend say, well, why don't you talk to so-and-so? And I said, oh, that's not necessary. Well, how will they know? And I'm like, they know.
Yeah.
You put out an energy that, okay, I'm going to tell you what the energy that I've been putting out lately equals people saying you've changed. What does that mean to you? What does that translate to you? If somebody said, dude, I just want to talk to you today, you've changed. How do you take that and what do you say?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would personally, I would take that as, oh, Chris, you've grown.
Yeah, like a compliment.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
my tribe,
Oh,
10Xer.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think that's one of the challenges that definitely people have is because we have this social feeling, want, need, or desire per se to be loved as well as wanted, it's hard to almost cut off those relationships because you're cutting off a form of that social aspect or being. That also being said, I feel like that's where that growth comes from, as well as the ability to self-care, self-love, and essentially with you more or less putting away or offsetting those relationships, you open up yourself to better as well as more fruitful relationships as well. And so I feel like that's one of
Don't
those
mind that.
growing powers as well as the prowess of growth in itself. It's a challenge for sure, but essentially when you break past it, you know who wants to come along with you or who won't come along with you.
What's interesting too, and I don't know if you've experienced this with your tribe, I've met so many new people in the last 10 months, and I've never felt more seen by essentially at first a total group of strangers than I have in my life. I've never felt more like able to open up and be vulnerable, even more so than my supposed. It's like it kind of reminds me of like the Jetsons. It's like, oh, here's your friends, they're going to be your friends for 20 years, and it's like that's all I've ever known. It's like this is just. And when I was younger, I just thought that, these are always going to be my friends. And it was so hard for me in my 30s and then my 40s and now pushing into my 50s. When I first had to like weed the garden, it was so painful.
Yeah.
It was like this huge death. And it's like, but we've been friends for this many years. And now it's almost scary how quickly I can pull the weed and throw it in the bucket and not shed a tear.
Yeah.
Because your time is limited on this earth. You never know when your day is. And it's like, why would I allow these weeds to be in my garden for one more day? Why would I look at that dandelion for one more day? But have you kind of had that, experience with your new tribe, it's like, wow, these people see me. They understand me. They get me. I feel like I've been implanted into a group that I never fit in with. I don't know if you've kind of had that epiphany in your life.
I think that we're put in those situations as well as experiences in order to grow, and I feel like what separates I'm gonna deem you as a maverick. What separates the maverick from your general population? We're all put into these environments or these positions, and I feel like what separates people is you either can grow from being in this experience or being in this crowd, or you can get stuck and be stagnant and stay in this crowd. And so it's a double-edged sword for sure, because when you're put into that position or place, it's not necessarily a form of complacency, but more of a feeling of comfort, safety, as well as security from a social perspective. And so being able to breach outside and get outside of that, I feel like is a true form of growth, and be able to reflect on it is really cool as well. So I commend you for that 100%.
Thanks. Commend you as well. Okay, so of course Chris comes in with no notes or anything. It's just like all right here, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to say anything you want to say, and then we'll get into my questions. So I know that you have mentally prepared in your head about what you wanted to, speak about in this podcast. So is there anything that you've been thinking, oh, I want to make sure that I touch on this? And if not, I'll prod you a little bit more.
You're such a good podcaster that I think I've fully expressed everything that I've needed to. And if anything else does come up, I'm sure that we'll figure out a way to get it out down the line. So for now, I think you just did such a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This is one question that I want to ask, and I know that our viewers and our listeners would ask as well. When I went to my first bodybuilding show, a friend of mine was competing. I noticed that there was a wife in the audience. Her husband was competing, and as soon as he got off the stage, she had a cooler for him. And it was filled with, I'm just going to say, some shit food. So I've never competed. I've definitely done some really rigid things. And what I want to touch on is, were you constantly thinking about food? Did they give you a refeed? If so, what was it? Were you craving food? What happened after the show?
Yeah.
And I just want to throw this in there. When I had my coffee stand, I had a couple, oh my gosh, the most beautiful bodies you've ever seen. This guy was huge. I think it's safe to say he wasn't natty. And I was the only one that they would trust to make their coffee, because while they were on prep, Mel, can you put 1 tablespoon of cream? Yes. But then I never saw this happen to this couple. When they were off prep, they were still lean. Not stage lean, but still lean. 13 years of owning my coffee stands, waiting on a lot of clients who were competing, especially women, I noticed. I swear 2 weeks after the show, they would gain 20 pounds. So touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So first and foremost, everybody's different, right? And everybody's practices vary as well within the bodybuilding community. Obviously, everybody has worked hard to get to be on stage. And me, for example, my competition was in March, right? Or April, whatever month we're in right now. And I didn't have 1 drop of alcohol since October. Whereas I had one of my teammates maybe had a beer or two here or there so often. So everybody's different. And so as far as those practices, it definitely varies per person, especially depending upon what they hope to achieve. And so prior to your peak is when my coach does my refeed. And so pretty much what a refeed is your body's in a depleted state. So you give it more or less depleted of carbs or sugar. And so what we did for my refeed was sushi, which I was extremely grateful for.
That's a clean sheet.
So my refeed incorporated sushi, and it was prior to getting on stage. And so that was prior to peak or during peak time. And then once you're getting ready to be on stage, they call it peak week. And so that's the week that you're about to get on stage, and you are truly deprived. I remember reaching out to my coach, and because your glycogen levels are so low, you're not getting any carbohydrates. A lot of people don't know it, but fun fact is whenever somebody is starving in a true starved state, the first thing that their body attacks via their brain is glucose or sugar. And so I was having these moments where I didn't know if I was crazy or if I was like going through these fasted spiritual experiences. and I texted and called my coach, and he just laughed at me, and he's like, "You're just deprived. It's okay. It's normal. You're not crazy." So I felt like I was going crazy. So you're definitely in a deprived state. You're craving all sorts of food, anything and everything, literally anything and everything. So if you look at something that looks even somewhat tasty, you definitely consider eating it. So it definitely takes a lot of discipline as well as strength during that peak week, as well as that moment in time. And then post the show, you definitely have some people out there that pig out, that have that experience, and I commend them for sure, because you're depriving yourself, and we live in such a beautiful world where we have pizza, candy, treats, all of these fun sweets and snacks. I feel like we definitely should partake in them. Obviously, it's just more or less in moderation. The biggest thing with it is like post show. So like right now, it's called more of a reversal diet or period. So for the next 3 or 4 weeks post show, my diet more or less is staying around the same as it was during my prep. So sometimes the reverse diet is actually more challenging for people than their prep diet, because they've done the show, they've done what they needed to. Now, psychologically speaking, they're like, I should be able to eat and do whatever I want. But that's not necessarily the case, because your body is so deprived that whenever you do intake whatever foods that it may be, it's going to latch onto it as well as hold on to it for storage, because it's been deprived for so long, it doesn't know when it's going to get its next meal. So the tendency is, what it does is post-show period, that's actually when you're most susceptible to putting on the most amount of fat. And so for those individuals or the people that maybe pig out and gross out and maybe don't stick with their cardio or don't stick with their workout regimen or whatever, it's very, very easy for them to hold as well as put on that 20 plus pounds, because that's also their body was in a certain state prior to that stage weight or that stage show. So they have that's their peak, they have their norm. So their body probably went towards that norm really quickly and then put on a little bit more weight on top of that in order to make sure that it could survive during the winter.
So this is selfishly, what were your calories and macros?
Oh, so
I know they fluctuated, but in general, how tall are you, first of all?
I am about 6'1".
And what was your weight?
So my stage weight was about 180 pounds.
And what was your highest weight when you started?
My highest weight was 212.
Oh, so you leaned out a lot.
Yeah, so I went from
And you didn't
212
even
to
look like
180.
you had anything to lose. So that's 32 pounds.
Yeah, and that was my stage weight.
Dude.
Usually in the morning during competition time, I was probably 177 or so pounds. Yeah.
So what were your calories and macros?
So at the beginning stages, about 3,100 calories.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the latter stages, I'm in the mid 4,000s as far as growth goes. And then in that depleted state, I go down to about 2,600 or so calories. So
What
Yeah,
was your macro split?
it's tough. So my macros ended up, so during peak or cut, I was at about 190 grams of
Mm-hmm.
protein, about 30 grams of fat in the day, and then about more or less 180 so carbs within the day.
I love my fat.
Yeah, there was little to no fat in that diet.
Woo.
Yeah.
So, where are you now as far as your calories and your macro split? And do
So
they adjust that for you or do you adjust that? Do
they,
they offer guidance for post show?
yes, coach is really good about that, the off season plan.
Okay.
And so there's guidance there, whether people follow it or not, it's definitely on them. And so right now I'm pretty much at the same place that I was during prep time, except what we do is we just add about 150 100 calories or so per week, or just that way we can get the body back to an equilibrium
So,
state.
you're reverse dieting out. Okay.
And then once I get to my norm, post about 3 or 4 weeks, I'll do a check in with my coach. And then based off of whatever goals we have set for the next year or for the new year, we'll create our new macros based off of that.
So, that was my next question. Are you signed up for something this year?
So I am currently getting ready for my off season. So my off season will probably start in about 2 or 3 weeks. And then my next show will be next spring. So
Okay.
next year.
Okay. Do you like if you're listening or watching this, you guys, and you've never, trained for something like this, it is a natural high, and the endorphins, like
Yeah.
I can't even explain it. I mean, like I don't know what kind of white substance could ever beat this. So, did you feel like when you got done, almost a sense of like mourning, or like have you gone through that yet? Because
It's funny that you say that. So some people do have, they call it post show blues. And so some people do have that. And it's funny because I texted and I reached out to my coach. I was like, well, I'm ready to get bigger now and ready to go to my next show next week kind of deal.
I know.
The experience in itself
Yeah.
is so exhilarating. You
Yeah.
definitely aspire for it again.
Yeah.
But also as well, being as present that I was, now that I am out of it and I get to take a step back and just really enjoy the experience for what it was. Now, personally, I'm more delved or diving into of how am I going to get better that way. The next time is going to be that much better, that much greater, because, there's so much room for growth as well as opportunity. And so personally right now, I don't have the blues, which I'm extremely, extremely grateful for. And now it's just more about growth for me. Like, how can I do better now? That way it comes down the line. So doing my best to stay present. It's a challenge when you experience those kind of experiences, not dwelling in the past, looking towards the future. How do we stay present? And so what can I do right now? And the challenge, or I guess the grateful challenge, what I'm grateful for is that you have this reverse diet as well as experience, because you do need to be locked in, because it's really easy. Like, oh, I don't have a show coming up.
Yeah.
Let's go to Costco today and get some
Absolutely.
pizza,
Yep.
or let's go to Chick-fil-A or grab a
Yeah.
burger or whatever it may be. And you definitely have that room, which is the beautiful thing, to partake as well as indulge a little bit. But obviously just being as locked in as well as focused as possible is really, really helpful towards not having the blues, I would say. I personally feel like when people dwell in the past, that's how forms of sadness or depression is created.
Yeah.
And when people dwell heavily in the future, that's where anxiety is created.
For sure.
And so I think because I have something to be present with as well as about, it prevents me from having those blues. Hopefully that answers that question.
You're so positive. I love it. I love your energy. Energy is everything. I was just telling one of my Melfit 365 clients, money is energy.
100%.
I was telling her about, I got a bid for my windows for $1,700. And the person sent me an email and never followed up. I didn't like the energy behind the bid.
Mm,
The energy was either A, this person didn't have enough self-confidence to back this bid up. B, they padded it because they saw my home. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you have to feel good about the energy of spending money and the
100%
energy of
of receiving
receiving
it,
money.
100%.
And if I could coach this person that gave me the bid for the windows, I don't know who's going to write you that $1,700 check because I felt your energy, dude.
100%.
Guess what? I washed the windows myself. It's good exercise. I considered it my exercise, but yeah, I love your outlook on life. I mean, I knew that you and I were going to be a good fit when I met you. And back then I wasn't open to meeting new people because I was still in that, closed mindset of that, I was assigned these friends and these were going to be, I don't have time for any new friends. And my biggest thing is I am so high strung. And I think that they say you can't have two thoughts at once. I beg to differ. And it's a blessing and a curse. But I would find myself where I wasn't present. And if I was at a social function, all I can think about is what I need to do the next day. And I'd be looking at someone and it was like I was in a room where I couldn't hear the voices. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
could see the people. I was there. I would nod my head once in a while, but I was not listening.
100%.
So what I pride myself on is being where my feet are. We're busy. We have a magazine deadline, but I thoroughly enjoy podcasting, sitting here with you, and I am where my feet are. And I have learned, hopefully this is helpful to someone out there, I have learned that there's always going to be distractions. If you're a entrepreneur and a top performer and you really want to enjoy what you're doing, you need to be where your feet are. When I'm working out, I know at 9:00 when I come and stand at my desk, I'm going to have 15 messages, but it no longer gives me anxiety. The way that I flip that is allowing myself my time, manifesting working with people that will respect my time. And what would life look like if I opened my phone and there wasn't 15 messages? How blessed am I that I have 15 people that want to communicate with me about anything?
Right?
So, okay, so we're going to get into a couple of questions.
All right.
What does the future Chris look like, act like, feel like, and speak like?
Ooh, good questions. Okay, so future Chris looks like probably has the best physique that he's ever had in his whole entire life. So not only am I gonna have more muscle, more size, but also still be defined as well as lean. And so my goal this year is to beat my look from last year. And I feel like that's something that I'm taking to heart. I don't know what it is or why it happened or how it happened, but I feel like somewhere in time that people felt as they aged, they had to look or feel less or look or feel less better per se.
That's
Whereas I
true.
feel like I want to change that for sure, and evolve. So definitely,
Glow up?
yeah, glow up. And it's never too late. And you can do it year by year from my perspective.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to look like as far as feel like. I feel like the essence of how you feel is definitely reflective within your body. So feeling bigger as well as better. And not only does that help with the feel, but I feel like it also brings in a lot bigger as well as better as far as from what your environment hopes to give you as well as bless you with. And then where are the other ones?
Speak like.
Speak like. I think bigger and better, ensuring that my voice is, I'm fairly reserved as well as private. And I don't know if people can hear me. I know Josh is probably doing a great job with the audio work, but I'm very low toned in my voice per se.
You have a cool confidence to you.
Oh, thank you.
But you want to know what? When you are around somebody like yourself, I think that more than myself, and I have my own reasons of why I have had to bark in the past. Changed a lot, evolved a lot. Just wanting to be seen by people, demanding to be seen by people, and knowing that it didn't matter. And the only thing that matters is that I love myself.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my evolution. I think that you are doing the world a disservice by not doing your podcast and not using your voice, because you do have such a humble, cool confidence that when you do speak, people are going to listen
Thank
even
you
more.
so much. Thank you so
I
much.
really think they're going to value it even more because you're not that typical, you know, if there are a few out there, kind of like, you know, braggy bodybuilder. Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
fair.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not that way, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I love that.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
that probably answers your 5 years from now too, or is there something on
Yeah.
your?
Well, to take a step back, thank you so much. And I think to make sure that I answer that question is spreading as well as sharing that voice. But also, I think because my brain is all over the place, like with all of the things that we have going on in life, definitely speaking with clarity as well. That way, people can understand as well as absorb everything with full clarity as well as confidence. And then in regards to that 5 year aspect, you know, it does fall in alignment with that, just making sure really my biggest thing is growth. And so, am I growing physically? Am I doing more for my environment as well as the people within it? Am I being a productive member of society? As well as, am I helping others, creating more connections and empowering those individuals as well as those connections? And then slowly but surely, creating more confidence, more self-awareness, and definitely stronger, full-fledged fire of a spirit, I would say, is what my projection looks like for my 5 years.
Love that. Full-fledged fire. What is your favorite quote?
Oh, my favorite quote. To know is to know that you know nothing at all. That is the true meaning of knowledge. And so that is
beautiful.
by Socrates.
That's beautiful. That kind of goes to what I said about that
Yeah.
doctor. That's beautiful. I love that. Who is your biggest cheerleader?
I would say biggest cheerleader is mom, for sure.
Frankline.
Yes, Miss Franklin. And so, it's crazy to think about, and which is why I'm so grateful as well as appreciative for my coach, especially because during the competition as well as the show, you can just hear him yelling backstage, yelling in the background. And so everybody in the audience as well as the judges probably just hear him. He's like, "Get it, Chris, do it." And then he's, just motivating as well as inspiring you. But I would say, as far as life goes, definitely mom, which is why I think it was such a impact per se, as far as being told that, hey, mom's not going to be around for much longer. So definitely created that sense of awareness. And Zeus as well, he was a good coach as well, even though he just liked eating and going on walks for the most part. But, having that cheerleader as well as that coach in life, what I would say is the truest form of unconditional love. And so I'd say mom is number one. Hoping to find my significant other spouse here within that 5 year time period as well. That way I can find that true cheerleader for life. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm so glad you've had good support. What advice do you have for our listener who hasn't started their health and fitness journey yet? And, keeping in mind, if you're listening or watching, that, we don't expect everyone to just start by doing a bodybuilding competition. Now, it has been done, right?
It can be done.
But
yeah.
what advice could you give our listener? Because it's really, I think the problem is, that's why I always, when I have sales calls, I sell them the vacation,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't take them on the plane ride. You
Mm.
know what that means, right?
I like that saying.
I think that, but when they show up, I have that Mai Tai perfect every time. That's how I coach. I think the fear of what people are going to have to do is what stops people. So
Yeah.
what can you tell our listener about, how can you calm their fears? Are they too futuristic? What's going on here? Why can't people start?
You
What
know,
advice can you give them about how to start?
I feel like it comes with a form of confidence, self love, as well as self worth. I feel like that's where that fear stems from, is whether or not that person believes they can achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve, as well as confident that they can stick with it. They may not feel like they can perform or regulate their diet on a regular basis or go to the gym or perform any physical activity on a regular basis. They feel like they can't do it, so they don't start. And I feel like that comes from the self love, self care, as well as self confidence. And I feel that the easiest way to build that is actually by taking action. So, literally overcoming your fear by attacking it and just taking it day by day, step by step, asking questions and asking for help, I feel like are the biggest pieces of advice, because even this morning today, like I had a lot go on earlier in the week. I had a lot go on yesterday. I actually I'm gonna expose myself a little bit here, but
You
I
were going to
took
cancel?
no. I took a so last night even I took a second to rest on my stairs, and so I just took a seat down on my stairs in front of my door, and I actually fell asleep on my stairs. That's how exhausted I was, and then I woke up this morning and I was like,
You weren't still on the stairs, were you?
I wasn't on the stairs. I ended up getting up and making it to my bed. And I woke up this morning and I was like, I don't know if I can go to the gym today. And I was like, this is where champions are made, Chris. Get up and get out. And so I went to the gym. Next thing you know, I'm feeling energetic, feeling lively. Hey, I can make it to Mel Fit podcast. I'm
Yeah.
feeling good. And so I think it's just by taking those steps and taking action and just taking the day head on, not thinking too much about the future, not thinking about the mistakes or failures of the past, giving yourself that grace as well as love, and just saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do today. And this is why I'm going to do it. And just doing that on an everyday basis. And then lo and behold, before you know it, there's a form of confidence that's created, and that just keeps you going. And when you have that confidence in yourself, you know that you can move forward towards the future and that you can achieve whatever it is that you hope to achieve. So I'd say having that belief, love, and care for thyself, and taking it day by day, being present and asking for help when you need it. That way, you have forms of, like, from a coach's perspective of like, hey, I don't have to worry about my macros or my workout plan. Like, this is stress alleviated from my coach. That way I can just focus on getting to the gym, getting to the workout, maybe cooking the food, or like what you do for your clients, the fact that you make them food and prep it, like that in itself takes a lot of stress. That way they can perform whatever action it is. And, over time, hey, Mel, you've been great with the coaching. You've been great with the food prep. I feel so good as well as so confident about myself. I don't need you to prep food for me anymore because I can prep it for myself. Or, hey, I don't need the workout plan anymore because I've been doing it by myself. And it's all thanks to you after these 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, however long it may take, could be 1 week kind of deal. And so I feel like, yeah, hopefully that answers that
That's a
question.
good answer.
Yeah.
As coaches, it feels really good. And, if Mel and Lydia are listening, they'll probably agree with this, and you'll probably agree with this. It feels so good when your clients give you praise, but they did the work. You did the work. We're just the co-facilitators.
Yeah.
And I do think that it takes a special person to be a coach. I think it takes a selfless person.
100%.
And what Chris is trying to get across is, as coaches, we're kind of helping you with your mindset and build up your self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I hate hearing with weight loss and health and fitness is when I get there.
Mm,
And I think a true champion will never get there. We'll
100%.
always be working on being a better version of who we were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We're our only competition. Comparison is the thief of joy. And it's actually okay to celebrate along the way.
Yeah.
And once you build the self confidence and the self love, you're going to get there. And I think mindset's huge. So I'm going to talk about you a little bit, Josh. He's like, yeah, I'm used to this. So when we first started, and I know you can't see Josh, but Josh is the umbrella. Josh is the yin to my yang. Josh is amazing. Thank you, Josh, for filming this podcast. So I'm the idea girl. It's so funny. It's like, I honestly, it will probably scare you if you heard the way that I execute things. I don't even know how I'm going to do it. I just know I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I manifest and pray and attract the people that I need to help me get there. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when,
Right.
we're going to get this project done. But when I first met Josh, we lost about 50 pounds, and Josh's father passed about a year ago, in December, of cancer as well. And Josh is 26. And, that kind of, sent him for a tailspin. And most recently, he's down 40 pounds.
Nice.
And I'm going to speak for you, Josh, and tell you what was missing was probably mindset, but what you just said, Chris, don't you think? Self-love. I'll try not to cry. But yeah, right? Self-love, just loving yourself, knowing that you're worthy. This isn't about anyone or anything or proving shit. And I can't say that. I mean, I've done things in my life where I'm like, I'll show you, but that was really ugly. But, I mean, it's so beautiful when you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
If other people are clapping when you're winning and they're showing up for you and they're supporting you, you're grateful and it's beautiful, but that's not why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And that is why with health and fitness, if somebody meets Chris or met Chris when he was a personal trainer, and let's just say his client was a female, and she said, Chris, I need you to help my husband. How's that going to work?
I don't know. Does your husband want to help himself? Kind of deal.
Thank you very
Does he want the
much.
help as well?
And it's going to be very difficult for Chris to coach his client's husband because he's not ready.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it for
Feels like an
himself.
obligation for him at that
He's
point.
not done the work. He's not worked on self-love.
Yeah.
Yes, you can help him. You guys can, work the process together, but he at least needs to put his toe in the water, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest struggle. The one thing, I don't know if you ever struggled with this or you had this evolution in your career as a health coach, but I wholeheartedly do not take the blame for anybody that quits.
Oh yeah. You can't.
And it's so freeing. Like, and I can't say that in the beginning. I got wrapped up, Chris. I would take it as a personal failure. And now I know it's like, no one's coming to save you. It's you against the world.
Yeah.
You have a choice every day. Either you can frickin' pull the covers over your head or you can jump out of bed with fire under your feet like Chris and I.
Right.
So what can you kind of add to that as far as people being responsible for themselves?
I think you hit the head on the nail, and really the biggest thing is like you can only lead a horse to the water
Yeah.
kind of deal. And so when it comes to that responsibility per se, I can appreciate the one perspective or the side of it where you want to take ownership. This being said, the only thing that you truly have ownership over is yourself, your mindset, your mentality, as well as your actions that you take. And I feel like that's when true freedom comes, is when you know as well as understand yourself and that you did everything that you could do as well as need to do. That also stems from that confidence aspect to where nothing else really matters. Like, you know, everything is going to take care of itself because you took care of everything. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers or addresses that.
Good, good. So the one thing that I kind of got out and I wrote down is basically you said your mission statement during this podcast. Do you have that memorized, or
What was that? What did I say?
you're living in abundance and sharing it with
Oh,
others? So
yeah.
just note that that's your mission
Yeah,
statement.
my why.
And the one thing that I learned with my 4 coaches in the last 10 months is it's very important to have a mission statement for your business, a mission statement for yourself personally. If you're in a relationship, a mission statement for your relationship. It's very important because when the walls are closing in around you, you can always go back to that, and that can always be your constant.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
I think that it's really important to hone in on mission. The one thing that I was telling Josh the other day, that I don't know if you've ever traveled somewhere and noticed something that maybe people at a resort or somebody does. We travel a lot. We've stayed. A girlfriend of mine has timeshares, and there is a timeshare called the Vedanta group.
Okay. Okay.
Vedanta is what it's called, but it's the Vedanta group. It's a man. He was born in Mexico. He is an architect and he's a philanthropist. If you Google Vedanta, it is perfection. It is the coolest resorts. The style is just off the hook. You won't see a leaf on the walkway. The people that work there are happy. They put pride in everything that they do, and they have standards. Vedanta Playa del Carmen, Vedanta Costa Rica, Vedanta everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same standards. And I was telling Josh that the one thing that I take from all Vedantas is when you pass somebody that is working there, they will put their hand over their chest and they will bow to you and they will say something. And I think I was counting on Iggy and his Spanish. Mine's not as good as his. He's fluent. And it's something about, with gratitude. So I wanted to come up with something for for our project, Eats on Spokane Street, that is similar to that. And I definitely have standards. And what I came up with was my biggest pet peeve is when you walk into a busy place and you're not acknowledged within a certain amount of time, how do you feel?
Not welcomed, I guess you could say.
How long does it take to say, hi, be right with you?
Less than a second, right?
If there's 100 people in line, how long does it take?
Less than a second.
Yeah. So I've always had high standards with all my businesses. Welcome to Smitten. Welcome to whatever businesses we've had. So the one thing that I would like to instill in my businesses, and hopefully with our vendors as well, we're trying to create, a platform for our community and small businesses to thrive. That's our mission statement. And when you came in, you could be 15th in line, and I don't have to know your name, but I'm going to say to you, welcome in. And pretty soon you're going to be like,
that.
why do those people at Eats on Spokane Street put their hand to their heart and go like that? And then eventually you're going to come and you're going to order a coffee and you're going to say, would you, what does that
Yeah,
mean?
I like
And
that.
I'm going to say, put up your right hand. And what does that mean?
Heart. I like that. I like that a lot.
So it's a good story, right?
Yeah,
It's a
I like that.
good, because you really want everyone to, it's not my place. I didn't build it for me. I built it for we're building it for our community.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see
That
this.
welcome and that
Welcome
love.
in.
Yeah.
Welcome in. And then pretty soon, I hope people ask what that means.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That love.
Welcome in. And then everybody in that line knows they're being seen.
I like that.
So, yeah, I always remember that. And what's so cool is here you have this leader that is a multi-millionaire, and he knows he doesn't have to be there. His standards are instilled in all of his resorts. Hopefully you'll go to a Vedanta someday and see this. It's pretty cool. So also we were in Jose del Cabo last week, and here is another thing. And it's some things are just unspoken. There's a big golf course where we were staying, and we were walking on the golf course path. When you go by, they turn. If it's a mower or if it's a golf cart or whatever, they turn it off.
Ah, I like that.
And it's like such a simple gesture.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm trying to bring back respect, manners, and standards.
Appreciate that.
And I want everybody that is on our team to feel, respected, not this, we've got to, wait on this person. Like if you don't fit into the standards of our, community and our mission statement. So that'll be pretty fun, huh, Josh? Josh liked it. I'm pitching it to people, and just as long as everybody's like, okay, I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but I definitely want to, we definitely want to leave a mark. So, well, what is the name of your podcast?
So the name, my podcast isn't up yet.
Okay.
First and foremost, forewarning.
I'm
so
a
if
manifester.
People start searching and can't find it. So it's going to be called the Spiritual Bodybuilder Podcast.
Okay. The Spiritual Bodybuilder. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. So it's been a great podcast with you. Like,
thank you
it's
so
just
much
like
for having me and inviting
coffee
me,
with a
welcoming me.
friend.
Yeah, thank you
You're
so
a
much.
great speaker. I can't wait to, watch you grow even more and hear about all the people that you influence. So anything in closing? Anything that's been on your mind? I don't want you to get in your car and go, oh, why didn't I say that?
Oh, nothing in particular. Again, if something does need to come up, we'll definitely ensure that we do get it out and about.
We'll have you back. I'd love to be on your podcast.
Yeah, 100%. You might be one of my first guests.
Thanks. So thank you, Melfit Army, for listening, for watching. I take a moment to just close your eyes and reflect, and maybe you've been walking, and take a second if you have your phone with you, and just take a couple notes and jot down. Absorbing information is one thing, but what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Okay, so take a couple of things and do something with it. We're going to attach Chris's social media handle, and feel free to reach out to Chris, myself, Josh, anything that inspired you guys. It's a little bit disheartening for me with social media when I meet people and they say, I see your content, I love your content, but they never like it or they never comment. Not that it's my ride or die, not that I need that. I don't have that ego, but it really does feel good to know that that you've added value to someone's life. So, I encourage you to be vulnerable and, reach out to Chris and let him know, is there something that you're struggling with?
Yeah.
Is there something that we can help you with? Have you aspired to sign up for a bodybuilding competition, but feel like you just don't even know where to start, and you're so lost? So please be vulnerable and let us help you take that first
Yeah,
step.
100%. And it doesn't even have to be bodybuilding, but any lifestyle changes. And I think that's the biggest thing is the foundation of everything in life comes from the body. And so just being able to change whatever it is that you want to change in life, usually you can change or create dramatic changes within one's life just via the body. And so if any ever there's any questions, comments, or concerns, definitely I'm here. I'm open. I'm available. And I think, like what you were saying, it's very, very important, not for the content creator, but for the community as far as social media goes, just being able to interact, whether it's posts or comments or maybe say how this positively affect you or what you think about it. Somebody might have the same question as you, and because that person asked a question, maybe they were able to get an answer, vice versa, whatever it may be. So just being able to interact and create that community, I feel like is very impactful for the whole entire community in itself.
Absolutely. You don't have to go it alone.
Truth.
All right, you guys, thanks for joining us. Whether you walked or rode your bike or rollerbladed or ran or whatever you did, whether it took you a day or 2 days to get through this podcast, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Josh, for making this podcast happen when we do them. We should be more scheduled, but I actually, not being a spontaneous person, I find joy in doing a podcast when I meet somebody that I'm inspired by.
Oh,
So that is you,
thank you.
Chris. So
Thank you so much.
thanks for listening or watching. It's been amazing having you guys here, and we will see you guys on the next Melfit podcast. Have a great day. Bye-bye.